Good morning, everybody. Well, welcome to First Church, First Center here in New York City. I looked at the board behind me or to the side, and there's a lot of you here, and so welcome wherever you are. We'll have a time for personal sharing afterwards, and you can say hello if you want to. And usually at the end, there's a time for sharing what we call our good news. Hold on a second. So here we go. I was looking for the textbook. I now have it in my hands. From our textbook, I thought I'd start off by seeing what Ernest had to say on the subject of Thanksgiving. He wrote, "It has been said that the prayer of thanksgiving is the prayer of appropriation. This was the manner in which he prayed when he did any of the things that were miraculous. He said, 'Father,' or Spirit within, 'I thank thee.'" There's a recognition, so he's recognizing that there's power in their spirit, right? And there's a unification. He's saying, I am one with this power. And then there's a realization. And so these are the three steps of our affirmative prayer. We're recognizing that God is, or Source is, this energy is, and we're a part of it. And we're realizing, as we do this, these are the three steps that we do in our affirmative prayers. When we speak the words of thanksgiving to the Spirit within, we know before we ask that it will be answered. This is what they attribute to Jesus. Before they ask, I will answer. There is something in this attitude of thanksgiving that carries us beyond the field of doubt into one of perfect faith and acceptance and receptivity, and then realization. So again, appreciation, gratitude, and thanksgiving. The motive power which attracts and magnifies the hidden potentialities of life. So that's a lot to say. But once again, recognizing that there is this perfect power. It's everywhere. It's in you, operating through you. And then realizing, with this realization, you're opening up channels to great good where you can proclaims, that I'm healthy and there's a divine pattern of health. I'm in the right place at the right time, and you can go on with your affirmative prayer. So I invite you to take a look at the textbook if you want to read more. That would be in the glossary. And then go to the index if you want, and there's more readings on Thanksgiving as well. So let's start today with our lesson entitled Thanksgiving Thoughts. And before I go on, this particular Thursday where we do our self-healing class happens to be, it's Thanksgiving Day. So I know from feedback that there's many of you that are not with family, and we're going to have a special Thanksgiving, we'll call it Hay and Holmes Thanksgiving session at Thursday at 7 p.m. So you can tune in. And if you're in New York and you happen to be by yourself and you want to come in, we'll have some, snacks, some light food here. So you're welcome to join us. Just give us an idea how many people are coming so we can have the appropriate amount of food. That'll be Thursday at 7. Or tune in if you happen to be by yourself. There's no reason to be by yourself. You can be with us Thursday at 7. So beginning, my mind is filled with thoughts of thanksgiving. Thursday is the day we set aside to remember the blessings that have been given us and graced our lives. Some people only know Thanksgiving to be Turkey Day. They don't have a clue where the holiday came or what it's about. That wouldn't be my generation, but younger generations, right? And I'm going to share with you a little bit of the story, which I'm sure most of you should know. When people came to America, they landed in different places, and one group wound up in a place called Plymouth, which most of you know is in Massachusetts. And they were settlers, And that group was called Pilgrims, and they had to struggle quite a bit during that first year and a half, or whatever it was, just to get through the winter. If you've ever been in Massachusetts during the winter, you know what that is. Along the Cape and places like that, it's pretty cold. And it was dire for them because everything was new. If you can imagine, you've come to a new country and you haven't really settled, and there you are with a New England winter. But they got through it, most of them. And when spring and summer came, finally, it was a great relief. They busily planted seeds for crops, and they grew corn and different vegetables that first year. They had combed the countryside, and they had found things like raspberries and strawberries and wild grapes and such things. And they surveyed the land, and they also found it was abundant with everything from deer to different types of animals that they could hunt. In the waters of the bay, there was fish and seafood of all kinds. So Massachusetts, Plymouth was a place where you could survive if you knew what you were doing. That first summer was very warm and rainy, so when the autumn came, when you got towards September and October, there was at last some food. There was crops, there was corn. And they decided to have a celebration to give thanks for everything that, just for making it, right? And during that time, from what I can gather, they had they had developed rather a fairly good relationship with the indigenous people. And there was the governor at the time, I can't remember his name, said, "Let us gather the fruits of our first labors and celebrate with a feast." There was an elder, his name was Brewster, and he said, "Let us take a day upon which we may give thanks for our blessings and invite our native friends who have been so helpful to us." The story goes on eventually that the great, I don't know if it was a king or a chief, and if I say his name right, I'll be lucky. I think it was Massasoit. The great chief came along with a large number of his people, his warriors, and all were dressed in very exotic, at least for pilgrims, standards, exotic outfits with feathers and foxtails, and their faces were colored with different colors of, I guess I'll call it paint. In the little village of Plymouth, there were 4 storehouses and 6 or 7 little houses, and that was it. So the natives who were the guests came and they ate and they slept outside, as was their custom, and it was still warm enough. And for the feast, both the natives and the pilgrims had hunted before the gathering, and they brought deer and fruits, vegetables, clams, seafood. I imagine they had rabbits, and it's debatable whether they had turkeys. I've read conflicting reports on that this weekend. But anyway, they created long tables, and the women served the food, and it was a festive time. And this holiday lasted 3 days, and it was described by different people as being fun. The young men, both the pilgrims and the natives, ran races, played games. Every night, the natives sang and danced for their friends, and there was an exchange of all of that as well. On the 3rd day, the native chief and his warriors said farewell to their English friends, and they began their long hike through the woods, and they went back to Mount Hope Bay. I'm not sure where that is. On the last day of the party, the pilgrims had a service of prayer and praise. The elder, once again, Mr. Brewster, preached the first, we think this was the first Thanksgiving sermon, giving thanks for all of the bounty, all of the goodness, the friendship, that they had experienced and shared that week. And just the fact that they got through that first very arduous year. The first Thanksgiving took place over 300 years ago. Since that time, in 1621, we've been celebrating Thanksgiving without interruption. Eventually it became a holiday, a national holiday. I can't remember what year it was or which president at this point, but Thanksgiving has been kept as a day of gratitude. And if you don't have to remember the history, I just thought I'd give it to you today. But keeping that that holiday is very important. It's one time of the year where we get it right. And by that I mean we all I think most everybody knows just by the name of it, it's the time for Thanksgiving. And it's a day to be thankful for all that we have been given in good times and in the rougher times. See, I always teach here, things in life don't happen to us, they happen for us. And God knows it doesn't look like it's happening for us when some of the things are happening. You wouldn't think of it as a miracle, you wouldn't even probably think of it as good. But everything that happens, that you experience, at least I attest to it, it brings you to a place of, you ascend because you're in a different place after you've been through it. There's been a lesson in there for you. I joke about it some Sundays. I say there must be a pony in this someplace. And that goes back to that old story, when they're looking through stacks of hay and manure and everything. People who practice this teaching are really looking to see the good. And if you're training yourself to see the good, you're going to eventually, you're going to see it. But that's a religious scientist, that's a truth student, because he or she's really preoccupied with looking for the good. And they really look away from the other stuff, because most of the world lives in reaction to one another. And this teaching is much different. We understand that people are evolving. Our friends, our family, the people who sometimes seem to cause us trouble, they are where they are, plain and simple. And you have been in those places too. You've been in places where you've been less than wonderful. So have I. And each and every case, we were where we were, and we were growing and we're evolving, and God knows we wouldn't want to be there again and do it. You change and you evolve. And one of the things that we understand here, those of us who understand the teaching, is all of life is evolving, improving, growing. Not just you, not just your family, not just your little group, but that's the way it works worldwide. Every religion, every person, every place. We used to play with it by saying it's all evoluting along. And really what that's talking about is the principle of life. The spirit of life seems to push us a little bit, nudge us, if you will, forward. We're given lots of moments in quiet where something comes over us. I call it spirit. And there's a restlessness when you're not doing it the right way or the way that you could. And that's a gift, actually. And if you don't pay attention to it, then comes the lessons. And we have all kinds of corny little sayings, which one of them you hear often. Same song, different verse, a little bit louder, a little bit worse. And so you don't have to go through all these hard times, actually. If you're living, as Ernest Holmes spoke about, in close communion with Spirit, if you're meditating a little bit, and if you're journaling or you're finding quiet time for contemplation or affirmative prayer, you're going to get with it faster. You're going to listen quicker. If you tune out all of those ways in which Spirit attempts to get your attention, then what happens is you'll have some type of situation. It won't be fun. And so in our process, in our teaching, and with affirmative prayer, we take some time. Remember what I started out with from the textbook, where we recognize that this energy is, It's in us, operating through us, and it's in everyone. And it does speak to us in lots of ways. One of my friends said, we have an internal guidance system. See, it's always there. I was corrected 30 years ago at least by one of my teachers when I think I said, I don't know something in a class. And he said, in front of everyone, it's a little bit of embarrassing, he says, there is that which is within you that knows. So he didn't let us off the hook anymore by saying, I don't know. He said, there is that which is within you that knows. You can directly ask yourself things like, what's the most self-loving thing I can do? If there's a place where there's a choice to make, right? You can ask yourself, what's the most self-loving thing I can do? And it's just like, the answer is instantly there. The question is, are you going to follow through on it? See, that's a big test. And if you ask yourself those questions, Spirit always answers. It's always there. And even when you're not asking those questions, when you're spending a little bit of time in contemplation and prayer, you'll be given the information you need. Then the thing is developing the courage to act on that information. And oftentimes that's going to put you in a different place than many of the people you know. Because then you're following your own tune, your inner voice, whatever you want to say, and you're really embarked upon a road that's less traveled. You know, you're choosing not to fight, you're choosing not to react, you're choosing to see the good, and you're choosing to go your own way. That's greatness. That's a it's a person who's has begun to awaken. You won't be understood by everybody, though I've told you before. It was Emerson said, to be great is to be misunderstood. You're not living after the world's opinion or the 1,000 likes on social media. You're following your own inner knowing and conscience. So today I'm thankful for the awareness that comes through this teaching and all that we've been given. And all that we've been given, again, in good times and in bad. And again, that's probably not an easy thing for everybody to do, but that's what we try to do here. Again, whether in good times or bad. At this time, family and friends, they make an effort to unite. They may not all sit down around a table and have a feast. Families are smaller now in America, probably throughout the world. But there's an effort on this day to get together, or also, there's an effort to reach out to one another and connect. A few years ago, I don't know, the phone systems were different. We're going back a decade. And it's like the phones would shut down, or they have difficult times getting calls through Thanksgiving afternoon, because there's a real effort worldwide, it seems, or at least through this country, for people to connect with their loved ones. Phone lines being jammed up on Thanksgiving Thursdays has been a common thing I've heard from time to time. Today, Thanksgiving is observed in the United States kind of as a timeout to remember, a time for us to take a pause, to remember and have some gratitude, to appreciate, to connect with those that we love, and a time to connect with the idea of love itself. So if you live in Thanksgiving, you're putting yourself right in touch with Spirit. And as was told to me many years ago by some minister, I can't remember which one, gratitude in itself is causative. See, again, you're a creature that creates through your thoughts. And if you're coming from a place of gratitude, it's causative in and of itself. You're like opening up your world. You're almost like a wizard, with your wand. I'm grateful, I have gratitude. Well, it's like that opens up. It opens you up to seeing life in a different way and to experiencing life in a different way. So today, in this week, this Thursday, it's about appreciation and connection with those that we love, and it's a time for us to connect with love itself. A time to recall the people who have always been there for us. Or if you're a little bit older, like my generation, we go back in time and we remember the people who were our champions. as I was preparing my notes, there's so many people that came through my life, right back to when I was a little kid. There was a woman I called Aunt Alice. She wasn't really my aunt, but she may as well have been. My God, she thought I was the best thing that ever happened. And then I remembered her sister, Julie, and she was very similar. And there's been all these people that flooded my memory who, honest to God, I mean, in some ways they did more parenting than my parents. And if you allow yourself to do that, you're going to see and reflect, you're going to remember that there's been a lot of people rooting for you all through your life. And this memory can really fill you up with gratitude. It's kind of startling. It's just let myself do it a little bit. And then I was in my office and moving around, taking notes. And as I was sitting, I was looking at all these books, on the walls and the bookcase, and thinking the tremendous amount of information that are in those books still that have changed me over time. And as I think about it, my heart pours out a very special thanksgiving to all the great people, all these spiritual beings that wrote these books that informed me, and these teachers that came before me that gave me this information. And I'm sure you all have got the people who have helped you. You could have been watching these people on YouTube. If you're younger, you could be watching them on TED Talks. You could be, they could be your own family members. But there's, if you've lived a life and you've brought in all this information, it's give thanks to those who shared their thoughts and words. In my case, it filled all those shelves that offered me a feast. And that feast is always there in those shelves. I only need to go back. That Science of Mind textbook, everybody ought to pick up. I won't should on you from time to time, because it's rich with life-altering information. Louise Hay is the one we go to first, because she will basically take a synthesis of what Ernest was teaching, and she makes it very readily available for us. But beyond that, the textbook is there, and there's so many other books, and from so many other different authors. If we just spend a little bit of time, and then we can open our minds and our souls to all this uplifting information. Or maybe today, you can want to go to your flat screen TV. We have 2 of them in this room. We have like 6 of them in the building. And you can listen now to Emerson. It's that easy. You can go to YouTube and you can listen to Ralph Waldo Emerson. You can listen to Ernest Holmes. And most of them, you might be able to view them. You certainly can listen to them. So when I look at my bookcases this Saturday, Louise, of course, was there. Ernest Holmes, Emmett Fox, Frederick Bales, Emerson, Gabby Bernstein even, Bill Wilson, and there's so many others. There's also Carl Jung, there's Carlton Whitehead, Suzuki, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Oliver Wendell Holmes, and it goes on and on. There's Robert Frost, and there's hundreds more waiting for me once again to fill my spirit with food that is timeless. We live in a time where we can do all of this, and many of you are much younger than I, and a younger generation. You have many new people that I don't know of. I'd love to learn of them, though. I was looking up thought leaders this weekend, and there's dozens of people that are half my age that are called thought leaders. And I'm reading the things they're saying, and they're in many cases saying what we're saying, but they just say it in different language. I'd love to unite with some of them here at the center and bring them in for what will be the future, or they're present now. But that group of thinkers they're coming they're coming up. So I was grateful to find them all this weekend too. Today I think, and I pause, knowing how grateful I'm going to be this Thursday. I know we're going to be here, and there'll be a few of you here, and we'll have food, and we'll be connecting with some of you on the screen, and you may be alone in your apartment, but you won't be alone, because we will all connect. I also know that day I will practice thanksgiving. And I know I'll practice that day every day. I'll practice that idea every day. People who are really in this teaching, essentially that's what you're doing. You're practicing the presence. You're practicing knowing that there is spirit here operating in you and through you. And you know that that spirit's in the other person and people in your family and in your room. And with that knowledge, you're going to be less inclined to talk about them or see them in any way other than wonderful, because you know the truth of them, that they're spiritual beings. You know they're individualizations of God life. And you realize too, in this teaching, you develop some self-realization. You'll realize that I am one with spirit. I'm an individualization of it myself. And every encounter I have with other people is in fact a holy encounter, because everybody I encounter is another spiritual being doing the best that they can at any given moment with the awareness that they have. So for us who practice this teaching, every day of the year is an opportunity to have a feast and to start with gratitude when you wake up in the morning. It's not like, oh God, it's morning. It's good morning, life. Good morning, God. So again, as I was looking at my bookshelves, they offer the lives and thoughts of these great and wonderful, radiant human beings. As I look back on my life, my God, there have been so many wonderful people and teachers. And again, I can go to my audio collection, my old tapes, they're cassettes, they're not in good shape anymore. I can go to them, or I can go to the flat screen TV, and I can listen to so many people where I can remind myself and be inspired. I can come to the center's huge volume of lessons on Facebook also, which, if you don't know, we have so many short videos and so many lessons, and they're all free and available, and you can listen to them 24 hours a day. I also, and I would invite you to think of your family this week, to all of them. I will, and realize just how much I owe them. I was remembering a time when I was a teenager, and I wasn't having a particularly good relationship with my parents at that point in time, but I was having a very tough time for a couple of years, and I was taking care of somebody who was deathly sick. And my car broke down, and I was taking multiple buses, and it was a very tough time. And I remember meeting them. I took a train up into West Palm Beach, and I remember them meeting me for dinner. I went outside, and they gave me the keys to a new car. And I hadn't thought of that in 25 years. And it wasn't like a super luxury car, but it was a new car at a time where I was dead-ass broke, and at a time where I was trying to take care of somebody who was dying. And it's just like, and that isn't what I usually remember about them. What I remember about them most is all the words that they shared. And my father, every morning, when I called him with my problems, asking me that question, what exciting challenges do you have today? Because, I had lots of problems, and he wanted me to understand that I had exciting challenges. I owe them, both of them, those two individuals, more than I could ever speak of. But there's so many other people, too. And this has been such a wonderful experience for me just today, this weekend, to remember these folks. So I invite you to do something similar. You've heard me say before, sometimes, I think this came from from Schweitzer, sometimes our light goes out, but it's blown again into a flame, that little flicker into a flame, by an encounter with another human being who extends their love to us, or just a word of encouragement. I can remember a few people I had very short conversations with that have changed my life. And if you think about it, you probably have some people like that too. Each of us owes the deepest thanks to those who have kind of like given us those gifts at those important times, and who have helped us rekindle this inner light that we have. So I'd like to just take a minute now to reflect on the people that meant a lot to you. Just take a moment, pause. You might want to share about them afterwards, but just remember them. That's a great gift if you bring to your memory what they gave you or how they encouraged you. As they come to mind, as you recall them, recall their memory, and the little things, and maybe the big things they did for you. Remember how you feel. Remember what they did and how you feel now. Remember the encouraging word or words, the love actually that you received from them. And maybe you can consider your brothers or sisters if you had them, or cousins, parents, grandparents. Whatever they gave you was important to you, and it's really good if you can remember some of these things and how it helped you. So let's remember them now and think of them again on Thursday. We get so busy we forget how much love we've actually experienced in our life. It's always good to remember love. It might seem so long ago, but let your mind drift a little bit and bring them back now into your memory. You might remember their smile or their encouragement, their love. I can remember one grandmother who was always cooking for me. Remember their unique way of supporting you. One of my favorite authors said that a Savior appeared to him as a new teacher. And he said that teacher was unaware that he was going to completely change this man's life. I've had teachers like that. Maybe you have too. What a gift some of these teachers have been. It's kind of like I was thinking one way for years, and all of a sudden this person comes into your world, and I mean, it was upsetting a little bit because it was challenging, but it changed my life. So one of my favorite authors, this was William Edelin, was recalling a teacher that changed his life totally. He said, I didn't know that man was going to totally change my life, but he did. Sometimes it's one person that comes into your life and is such a great catalyst for change. I can remember some of our ministers here, Reverend Theodora, who passed away last year. The things she said they were game changers. I have put in you everything that you need for your good and well-being. Remember that line that she used all the time? Other times, it's the collective messages we get from any and all of these people. If you're a person like me, I've read a lot of books, and you just bring it all into your being. It's the collective messages and wisdom from the books, the materials, the recordings, and the places we choose to put our attention. Remember, you always have the ability in your free time to put your attention wherever you want to. And you have the ability, again, to commune with great minds and great thoughts. So I'd encourage people in this Thanksgiving season in the coming year to maybe make it an intention to do that more often. Joseph Campbell is oftentimes mentioned by so many New Thought leaders as being a person that they are immensely grateful to because he was a catalyst for change, illuminating many walks of life with his books. The Power of the Myth was the one I started with. And you can see in books like these how our cultural stories from every religion contributed to the making of religions, and he gets at the underlying similarities. You can still watch his video series on, it's called Gaia, where he was interviewed by Bill Moyers. It's excellent. It's something probably everybody, I won't say should, but would benefit from. Campbell advised all of us, I remember first time hearing this phrase from him, he advised all ministers, thought leaders at the time to just keep pointing your congregations or your groups to the mystery. Keep pointing people toward source. It wasn't ever going to be found in a church. And also in his lectures in the mid-'80s, and his books, he exclaimed, interest in churches are rapidly declining. He was the first person who pointed that out to me. It was happening all throughout America, but he was actively talking about it back in the 80s. He said the great structures, the great churches of the world are destined to be museums in the future. They're not being supported, and they won't exist in the future. He's primarily because that whole structure where there's a hierarchy, where there's a God above and there's intermediaries, is disappearing. Nobody wants the dogma. Churches were disappearing from the world, and he said again, the best will be the museums and the repositories of great art and all of that. So this was something our founder, Ernest Holmes, greatly understood too, because he was conflicted about whether religious science should be a church or whether it's should be an institute or a teaching. Ernest loved the idea of the teaching going forward, but he was conflicted about the whole notion of churches. Ernest Holmes was wanting the teaching to survive for people so they could awaken to the greatness that they possessed and the power that they had at their disposal. He loved talking about principle and teaching principle. Dr. Holmes, or Ernest Holmes, was essentially saying, don't believe me because I told you. Ernest Holmes was encouraging us to practice seeing that you, in fact, are supplied and supported, and prove it for yourself. He was having us realize that Spirit works as a law, and it's done unto you as you believe. So Joseph Campbell, Ernest Holmes, and many of the greats that I'm referring to today were attempting to get us to see that whatever it is, this spirit, this love, this intelligence, this energy is within us. All advocated, certainly these two, just keep, for us, at these podiums, we're just spokespeople for the teaching. They advocate, just keep pointing people toward the mystery, the spirit that is within, right? Point people toward developing and having a direct experience. Keep pointing them in that direction, letting them know that they have everything they need within them. In New Thought, in religious science, we don't have any dogma. Sorry. We don't speak of saviors here either. We don't have sacraments. We might talk about saving grace. I thought about that yesterday, because we know that there is a spiritual connection that's within everybody. You might not live with the awareness that you have this, I'll call it saving grace, but it is a saving grace, because when you wake to it, it's always there. My dad used to say, though, it won't be the uninvited guest. If you turn to it and invite it into your awareness, it's always there. It's the story of the prodigal child. Just as soon as you turn to it, you may be off in the weeds, lost for a moment in time, but as you turn to it, it's always there. It's always available within you. And as you listen to it, it will guide you. So here we might talk about a power, and we do talk about a power and a presence that you can connect with. You can still listen to that 6-part interview I mentioned with Bill Moyers and Campbell. I think it's really wonderful. It's very rich. The main takeaway, though, is you always have something to be grateful for. If you don't have a sense of it, I'd invite you to stop right now. I deliberately gave you lots of examples of people you can recall. And if you haven't done it in the course of this talk, then please do it during this week, during this Thanksgiving time. Stop, take a moment, and challenge yourself to find a few things to be grateful for. I've taught this material in institutions where people were getting out of prison who were really, really tough characters. And I had them 3 times a week, and my whole mission was to get them to find something that they could be grateful for. And as soon as they started doing it, one thing at a time, their hearts opened and their world started to change. If you're down in the dumps, if you haven't been taking good care of your inner dialogue, which is what we talk about every Thursday evening, start taking care of your inner dialogue. Start challenging the negative thinking. Start a new dialogue right here today. We can all do this at any time. we can all take a second or two to take a pause to remember the love, or the love that's been given us, the care that has been given us. We can start with some of the love that's been in our life. Think of one or two people. Who were they to you? What encouragement did they give you? What loving message? And then let yourself go past that and let yourself consider how everything and everyone has been there for you. And let that knowledge and information fill you up. The fact is, you're connected with everything and everyone, and you always have been. You are one with life. All these people who have come into your life, and many are now gone, each of them have helped you to grow. You might think, I am one with all of them and all of life. I am connected to this inner source. I am one with it. You have the awareness that there is this great truth, this mystery, and it is in you now, and it's always been, and it's not going anywhere. Of course, you can ignore it, but it's always there. It's always there to remind you of the way home. Every week, in one way or another, we keep pointing you to this mystery, suggesting to you that you are one with it, and that it lives in you, you move in it, and you are inseparable from it. And we will invoke Louise and say, and all is well. This spirit will guide you if you allow its guidance. It won't be the uninvited guest. It's in everyone and all the time. Each and every one of us, if we take a pause this week, I hope you do, you can remember our champions, your champions. It might be an aunt. It could be a grandparent. It could be a teacher. It could be a mentor. It could be a good friend. It could be anyone. It could be your spouse. We've all had people that have always touched us or inspired us in profound ways. This is a perfect day, this Sunday, to bring some of them to mind. And this week, it's a great holiday week to remember any and all of these folks. I also want to say thank you to life itself. The thing that Ernest Holmes said, the thing itself in our textbook. I want to say thanks to the eternal mystery within me that we're always working with. The thing that we contemplate in this teaching. Thank you for this presence and the awareness, most of all, of this presence. And thank you for this great teaching, which gives us instruction how to use this thing that we possess. I want to say thank you. I want to be thankful that I have the opportunity to keep pointing people to this mystery and the power that they possess, this presence. I keep pointing people to the mystery that William Edelin and Joseph Campbell spoke of, that Ernest Holmes spoke of, with certainty that that spirit is in everyone and responding to everyone. It doesn't leave anybody out. On Thursday, pause if you can. Wherever you are, pause for a moment from the turkey if you're eating turkey, or if you're doing a vegan interpretation of turkey. Pause during that time, and even from the people that you're with for a moment, and just think over your life with gratitude. Think back again over the people who were your champions, who came into your life, all these human beings who loved you, who cherished you, who supported you, who inspired you, and all that lifted your spirit at a time you needed it most. Remember them this week, starting today, with a full heart and with a profound sense of gratitude, and keep their memories close in thanksgiving. And so it is. Thank you.